You said there has been no anti-Jewish protests. Do the other individuals on the panel agree with that?
So I think there have been anti-Semitic protests.
I know there have been a number of incidents, especially one at our law school recently.
There have been anti-Semitic events on campus, which I interpret as anti-Jewish.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering.
America.
Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. People like to think that history repeats itself, especially political history. There is a cyclical nature to it. But I like to say that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. In 2020, it was the year of the summer of love, BLM, Antifa, racial politics, and the like. In 2024, there's a brand new Antifa, but it's really the same Antifa when you look at the details of what's going on. I'm going to get into all of this in the context of these protests happening over the weekend at Columbia University. But before we get to all that, I'm going to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. And if you like what you're seeing here in this or any other video on the channel, please smash that thumbs up button, like, comment, share the show with your friends, all that really good stuff, because all that feeds the YouTube algorithm. Thanks, guys, so much for all that you do in getting the word out about the channel. I'm going to really need your help with that in the next couple of days. As you guys know, I've been dealing with some family stuff and haven't been really posting regularly. So please get the word out. Share the show out to your friends more than you normally do. I'd really appreciate it. And for all you newbies out there, I hope this video earns your subscription as we talk about this idea of the new Antifa for this 2024 election cycle, which is really centered around anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas speech that we've been seeing from the fringes of the extreme left. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is the new Antifa, but in actuality it's the old Antifa, is because of signs like this that you see on the screen. You see, this sign was from the protests happening over the weekend concerning Columbia University and the anti-Israel protests, a lot of anti-Semitism. It's very palpable right now in the People's Republic of New York City. But a sign like this that you're seeing on the screen, this black and yellow sign, this is obviously a prefab sign. It's pre-made for a protest like this from a group called the Answer Coalition. This is one of many different socialist, far-left fringe agitator groups that are out there that have been doing this for years. I'm just going to give you an example of a couple of pictures here. Here's one from 2015, same organization with the same theme of signs. Here's another one from 2018, as you see, same deal here. And here's one from 2020 from another organization, another socialist organization, another prefab sign made for this sort of professional outrage, professional agitation that many of these students are getting caught up in now in 2024. Let's recap what's been going on the past couple of days, and then we'll tie it all up in a bow later on in talking about how students at these universities are getting co-opted by these fringe organizations. Last Thursday, the House Education Committee met to discuss anti-Semitism on Columbia University's campus in the People's Republic of New York City. This hearing is similar to what was held a couple of months ago concerning Harvard, MIT, and University of Pennsylvania and their lack of action in response to clear anti-Semitism on their respective campuses. If you remember, Elise Stefanik from New York was sort of the rock star of that hearing, really raking those institutions over the coals.
Flashback.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign.
End of flashback.
She's going to do the same thing here to Columbia, but first, Ilhan Omar is going to be questioning the president of Columbia University, and she's going to be framing the issue of protests against different groups very curiously here. Take a listen to this and pay attention to how Ilhan Omar is trying to frame the issues.
Thank you. President Shafiq, I wanted to get a clarification earlier. One of my colleagues asked you, have you seen anti-Muslim protests on campus?
I have seen, we have had pro-Israeli demonstrations on campus.
No.
But
just
not,
a protest that was
not,
against Muslims.
No.
See what she's doing there? She's not trying to frame it in the context of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. She's trying to broaden the issue to discuss hate protests against certain groups. And she's leading up to a point. I want you to pay attention here. It's very interesting tactic from Ilhan Omar.
Have you seen one against Arabs?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Palestinians?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Jewish people? Have you seen a protest saying we are against Jewish people?
No, I have seen.
Okay, thank you.
You see what's going on here? She's trying to say there's no protest against Jewish people. There's no anti-Semitism going on here. No one hates Jewish people. The president of Colombia seems to want to say something else here, but she keeps getting cut off by Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is trying to frame testimony in a way that suits her narrative. There's no issue with Jewish students on campus. What are you talking about?
Please disperse. Nothing to see here.
But as you'll see, the president of Colombia is going to have an opportunity to change her tune a little bit here, especially after her own colleagues on the panel say the exact opposite of what she said.
Thank you for that clarification.
Shafiq, you answered one of the questions of our colleagues across the aisle. You said there has been no anti-Jewish protests. Do the other individuals on the panel agree with that? Start with you, Professor Skizzer.
So I think there have been anti-Semitic protests, so I would say yes.
So you disagree? There have been anti-Jewish protests.
Strike.
Ms. Shipman?
I know there have been a number of incidents, especially one at our law school recently, that the students were trying to call a protest, but it was an event to harass admitted students who were Jewish, and it's outrageous.
And that's the point I was trying to make about Ilhan Omar's framing of the issue here. You can call whatever you want a quote-unquote protest, but substantively, what are they really? Is it an anti-Israel protest with an undercurrent of anti-Semitism? Or is it just a veil to allow people to preach their hate, to espouse their hate towards one group? This is what Elise Stefanik is exposing here, and these other faculty members from Columbia are being intellectually honest in their assessment of these quote-unquote protests.
It's anti-Jewish, so the answer would be yes?
Yes.
And Mr. Greenwald?
There have been anti-Semitic events on campus, which I interpret as anti-Jewish.
And Dr. Shafiq, you realize that at some of these events, the slurs and the chants have been F the Jews, death to Jews,
Yep.
F Israel, no safe place, death to the Zionist state, Jews out. You don't think those are anti-Jewish?
Completely anti-Jewish, completely unacceptable.
So you changed your testimony on that
horrible.
issue as well? So there have been anti-Jewish protests.
I didn't get to finish my sentence, so what I was going to say was there were protests that were called that
That's not what you were asked. You were asked, were there any anti-Jewish protests? And you said no.
So the protest was not labeled as an anti-Jewish protest.
I'm
It
not
was
asking what it
labeled
was
as an
labeled.
Anti-Israeli government policy.
The question wasn't what it was labeled.
But anti-Semitic incidents happen, or anti-Semitic things were said. So I just
It
wanted
is
to
an
finish.
anti-Jewish protest. You agree with that? You change your testimony?
Congresswoman.
Well, we're waiting.
Anti-Jewish things were said at protests, yes.
Thank you for changing your testimony.
Do you see what's going on here? This is the agenda gymnastics that I discuss in my book, Schnooks, Crooks, Lies, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons, available right now on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and other online bookstores. The agenda gymnast tries to twist and contort their way around to kind of create the narrative that they want. You see this with Ilhan Omar. You see this with President Shafiq from Columbia University. Oh, they weren't anti-Jewish protests. They were protests where anti-Jewish things occurred. Do you see the craziness in all this? The framing that Ilhan Omar tried to do, these weren't anti-Jewish protests. They just happened to be protests where anti-Jewish things happened. And Shafiq tried to do that same gymnastics with Elise Stefanik. She wasn't going to let her do it. She was right on it to make it clear that Ms. Shafiq here, President Shafiq, was clearly stating that there was anti-Jewish protests occurring on Columbia's campus. You want some examples? Let's go back to last week, and I'll show you some examples.
The university called in for help to disband a massive anti-Israel protest just a day after the school's president testified on the Hill about anti-Semitism. Watch.
I'm just standing here. Why are you doing this to me? Stop. You stop! You stop! You stop! She seems nice.
Yeah, I bet she's fun at parties. These are the tactics that you see from professional protesters, the rabble-rousing, the pushing the envelope with the police. I don't know if any of these people were really students of Columbia University or not. They're representing that they are, and I'll give some benefit of the doubt to it. But I just don't see that 108 people just getting arrested for no reason on a college campus like this. It's pretty irregular. Remember, this is in the People's Republic of New York City. This is ground zero for every type of fringe protest organization out there.
Some kind of freaky little something. Wackadoo.
So when you see people like this, you should really start questioning whether or not are these really students from Columbia or are these professional protesters? Because we've seen they're mixed together.
Oh my gosh.
Indeed.
Police charged the students with trespassing and 2 of them with obstructing law enforcement. The mayor and the NYPD commissioner describe a very chaotic scene.
What occurred was about 500 students left their classrooms, surrounded the quad, and were telling us we're the KKK. We should go kill ourselves. We're baby killers. And everything else you can imagine. It was sad. It was very sad to see.
You should not be using inflammatory comments like we saw. It was very vile, some of the comments that were made. And our institutions, I believe, should use this moment as a teaching moment.
They came out of the classrooms to do that. Mayor, with all due respect, I don't think they're interested in a teaching lesson. Among those arrested, the daughter of Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was seen right on that Columbia campus. Now, that's not her school. Here she is after she was released, smiling and hugging her friend. She does not go to Columbia, as I mentioned. She was suspended, actually, from her own school, Barnard College. Omar's fellow squad members, far left, were very angry. Jamal Bowman said suspending Omar's daughter was a political reprisal. Rashida Tlaib called the arrest appalling.
Boo. Freaking who?
And I call it theater. Because Ilhan Omar's daughter doesn't go to Columbia. She goes to Barnard, which is like a sister school to Columbia. But she's been suspended from there, so she really doesn't go anywhere at this point. But she shows up on Columbia's campus to get arrested at one of these protests. This is just one of many other examples of people and organizations co-opting events on different places, campuses, cities, and just taking over a cause for their own benefit, taking away whatever grassroots there was to it. Think about the photos I showed you from Ferguson and from 2018 as well. This is what they do. This is what people on the left do in election years. We saw it in 2020 with BLM and these same organizations talking about race politics, defunding the police and all that. And we're getting the same thing now from these fringe organizations. They're just changing the issue that they're showing up for. But this was a vanilla version of what's really going on out on these campuses, out of Columbia University. After the break, I'm going to show you the unvarnished truth about these protesters and what their motivation really is. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. Before I play this video, I'm just going to say a little bit, just to cover my ass a little. So you're about to see a video that was posted on social media on Sunday. It's a protest near Columbia University by the train station entrance, where there's going to be some chanting going on from the protesters. Now, if you look at the still frame here, you see there are some of the pre-made signs from these protest organizations like Answer Coalition and Socialist and Liberation Group that we were talking about earlier. It's that yellow and black one you see right by the wall of the subway stairs there. So clearly this is one of those co-opted protest chants. You're going to hear some very inflammatory things, some terroristic threats, some very offensive things here that I'm not going to edit, but I just want to warn you so that you have a little bit of viewer discretion. If you have some little ones in the room while you're watching this, might be a good time to take them out.
Everybody got that?
That said, let's get to the video itself. Now maybe you're starting to understand the full danger that these fringe organizations present, because they're co-opting a movement. Maybe it was a good faith movement among these students, and they're turning it into support for a terrorist organization, a terrorist leader, chanting for burning cities to the ground, support for rockets, give them hell and all that. This should scare the crap out of you. This goes beyond everything we saw in 2020 with Black Lives Matter, defund the police, and all of that. This is a call to war. This is a call to arms in support of terrorism. Terrorism that we see has been ramping up now that Iran and Hezbollah have entered the theater of war in the Middle East as well. Things are just getting worse and worse. So while Ilhan Omar and her ilk are talking about how appalling it is that students who weren't even on campus were getting arrested, especially when they're related to a fellow congresswoman, this is what's really happening in the reality on the streets of the People's Republic of New York City. It should scare the crap out of you. So let's put this all into context for a minute. Imagine you're a Jewish student on Columbia University's campus, and you're seeing these invaders, basically, from these fringe organizations coming with their pre-made signs to join protests. When you see other professional protesters, non-students, showing up to push the envelope to get themselves arrested, just for the glee and for the cred and for the gram, maybe even, you're seeing all this going on and all these chants of pro-terrorism all around you, targeting your people. Imagine the horror that these students are going through as all of this tumult is going on around them.
I really do believe that these protests have lost the plot, so to speak, and have really just turned into incitement to violence and Jew hatred.
New York Mayor Eric Adams condemning videos such as this, which he says shows a young woman with a sign pointing to Jewish students stating Al-Qassam's next targets.
What the actual fuck?
But imagine this is your child holding that Israeli flag, and they're going to be the next victim, according to this protester. How is this even a protester? This is a complete incitement to violence. This is gaslighting, saying, you're next. You're going to be next. We're going to come after you now. How this is allowed, I have no idea. And how the president of Colombia is saying that, oh, there's no protest against Jewish people. There's no anti-Jewish protests. What do you call this? Come on.
In a letter obtained by NBC News, Columbia Rabbi Ali Buchler writing to students, "It deeply pains me to say that I would strongly recommend you return home as soon as possible and remain home until the reality in and around campus has dramatically improved."
And I, for one, would agree. If I was a parent of one of these students, I would absolutely say, come home. Be safe at home. You can probably get better protection at home than you will at these campuses, because all these educators, these high-minded intelligentsia, we've seen it in Harvard and MIT and UPenn, now Columbia. What are they doing here to protect these students? Maybe, something here, something there, but on a grander scale, they're exposing these students to danger, possibly even mortal danger, on a daily basis.
Going on to say, no one should have to endure this level of hatred, let alone at school. Nick Baum says while many of his peers have left, he's chosen to stay.
Your reaction to the letter?
I feel disturbed, but I feel it is completely indicative of the horrible disturbances that Jews on campus have been feeling over the last few days. As a Jew, I no longer feel welcome on campus.
A Columbia University spokesperson tells NBC News in part, "We are acting on concerns we are hearing from our Jewish students." The White House weighing in, saying in part, while every American has the right to peaceful protests, calls for violence and physical intimidation targeting Jewish students and the Jewish community are blatantly anti-Semitic, unconscionable, and dangerous. They have absolutely no place on any college campus or anywhere in the United States of America.
So what are you going to do about it?
I'm sorry, maybe it's just me, but do these words ring hollow to you? I can appreciate all the lip service that Columbia and even the White House want to give to this issue, because nobody wants to be on the side of pro-Hamas terrorist supporters like these protesters in New York City. But come on, folks, can we get a little more action behind these words? What exactly is Columbia doing to make sure that these students are safe? The ones that are leaving clearly have no faith in Columbia keeping them safe. The ones that do are really taking their lives in their own hands, I guess. But what is being done to crack down on this violent rhetoric? These protesters that are just out here for themselves and pushing the fringes. These professionals who are probably getting paid to do so, to hold up the prefab signs and all that are then getting arrested and they get their own lawyer and they get out scot-free. There's no bail, of course, because it is the People's Republic of New York City. What is being done to ensure the safety of these affected populations in Columbia, the Jewish students there? Frankly, I don't see anything going on but a bunch of lip service. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this week, especially it being Passover, that these students find not only security on campus and safety, but protection from harm from any of these fringe organizations that may escalate from terroristic threats and support for terrorism to something even more dangerous than that. I pray nothing like that happens at Columbia or anywhere else, especially during this week. But listen, that's just my opinion on things. I want to know what you guys think about all this. Let's get in the comments together. And as always, like and share the video with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. Let's all get together and talk about this and bring awareness to what's going on at Columbia and other higher institutions of learning all over America as it pertains to this Israel-Hamas issue and the anti-Semitism that is rampant on these campuses. Let's all get together in the comments together to discuss this and all the other shenanigans and buffoonery happening every day this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.